what does nuclear really add? What's the value beyond just the generation of available, affordable, reliable, clean energy? What does it also do? And that's the message that we're attempting to give, and that's the message I really need help from you guys on. So I did this part. So I'll go on to Roman way. We have formed under the American Nuclear Society what we call Nuclear in the States. All 48 of our contiguous states are going to have to deal with 111D by 2030. How are they going to do that? So acknowledging and recognizing they all have varying activities, 31 of our states produce energy from nuclear, but most of those nuclear energies cross over state lines. So you can be a non-nuclear producing state and yet import energy from nuclear plants. How are you going to value that in your states of reducing your emissions by 32% by 2030 if we don't have a comprehensive, systematic approach? Then we're going to have chaos. So what we're doing is we're putting together, this is why I asked Andrew to be on this committee with me, along with some other folks, Dale Klein, and Pete Lyons and others, where we're, and actually there's a group, forgive me, you know this, David, but I didn't know. There's an organization called the National Association of State Electricity or Energy Optimizers. Yeah.
Offices.
Yeah, NASEO, who knew? So now I have the general chair of NASEO on this committee, because what we're going to do, working through the National Governors Association and going to every governor, and I've already told our governor this morning that he will be second only after the governor of Illinois, to talk to them about how we can help them structure their approach to this to make sure nuclear gets the appropriate value in their decision making. So this is something that you, as part of Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium Authority, can help us with. I'm chairing that organization because I want to push that. I believe, I'm passionate about the fact that we have to recognize this for our current population and generations to come. So I'm going to give you some information shortly that gives you a sense of where we're doing with that. So we've already started it. We've stood up the committee. We've put together the policy things we want to do. Now we're developing the strategies we have to do, acknowledging and recognizing no two states are created equal. And we're finding as we're going to these different states, they have a different perception of things. But when we talk to the governors and we talk to their staffs about what they're seeing from nuclear, they're like, I had no idea. And so we're saying, okay, but now that you do know, what can we do about it? And so that's where we're really pushing. And I want to tell you that with that also, and I'm working with our Congress. I've been down spending more time than I've needed. I probably need your help with this, Mary Alice, and also Regina, and also Colleen. I'm pushing legislation. I wrote legislation. I know that you should be scared of this, okay? And I gave it to Senator Murkowski, and what it does is it acknowledges and recognizes our nuclear power plants as national assets. And what it establishes is a full recognition of the fact that the vast majority of them were built some 20 or 30 years ago over a time period of licensing of 6 to 8 to 10 years, obviously to license, construct, place into operation at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars. And they've had hundreds of millions of dollars of enhancements and safety upgrades and so on and so forth. But to build that same plant today would take 6, 8, 10, 12 years at a cost of billions. Sometimes multiples of billions. And so as a result of that, it makes no sense to let a nuclear power plant shut down simply because it cannot economically compete in the region in which it stands, whether it's competing with natural gas or it's a regulated market. In addition to that, and I don't know if you're aware, but our current laws require David's plants to shut down in certain times during the day when they should be operating at 100% base load being that they're providing 724 power, you know, and they're at 100% rated thermal power to provide the most they can, to derate to go and purchase other renewables such as solar and wind at higher costs than it would cost him to generate it to begin with, simply because we're giving favorable treatment to wind and solar, which have already been given billions and billions and billions of dollars of subsidies, and still only provide 4% of the electricity in this country, and are, like it or not, are subject to the whims of the wind and the sun, and don't have good storage methods no matter what people will tell you. So as a result, we have to acknowledge and recognize the benefits of nuclear. And when you tell this to the congressmen, and you tell it to the policy and lawmakers, and you talk to them about the things such as, I think we talked about this a little bit this morning, each average nuclear plant produces $470 to $490 million of sales and services and goods in the states in which it operates. Each individual nuclear plant has a $50 million payroll for the people at the site and the individuals that are working in corporate. Each nuclear power plant produces $21 million of tax base for infrastructure, roads, hospitals, police. Each nuclear power plant produces $67 to $69 million of federal income tax. If you're a politician and you're talking about jobs, you're talking about the economy, you're talking about reliable and available energy that's safe and environmentally friendly, I don't know how you can ignore that equation. So that's what we're doing. We're going to bring these politicians around by informing them. I don't know if I want to use the word educating them, but by bringing them around and then making them conspicuous by their absence if they don't get on board. Because what responsible individual could not see the benefit of it? So these are the kinds of things that we're doing, and I want to see the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium Authority full square in the back of that. When I met with the governor this morning, he wants Virginia, the Commonwealth, to be the #1 state in the Union in its enforcement, in its consideration, in its leveraging its unique assets for nuclear science technology, including the universities, including the industrial base, including the shipyard, and obviously including the utilities. Virginia is uniquely situated to be this, as we all know. That's why we're members of this authority to begin with. There may be some other states that can do something similar, but not exactly like it in South Carolina, maybe Georgia, and to a smaller extent New Mexico. We're going to set the pattern. We're going to set the basis. So while we're going to extend this concept to every state in the Union when we start working with them on the activities related to implementing a 111D of the EPA carbon rule, Virginia will be the lead. It'll set the standard. It'll set the direction, and the rest of the states will follow, and hopefully follow in a manner which is best for the country as a whole. So I wanted to share that with you. I have a number of documents here. I was going to give you a copy, and I can send you electronically, of the actual legislation we gave Senator Murkowski, who she's working to push this through. And I have to admit, and I told her no pride of authorship, so she's had quite a ball with it so far. And we've written a couple of op-eds and put them into magazines, and also I wrote something and put it into the governing magazine, which goes to all the governors. It talks about Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium Authority, who we are, what we're doing, and why we should be the example for all the other states. So the governor's pleased with that. He wants us to be the leader, and there's no reason why we can't and shouldn't be. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. So the fact is, the first year we were setting ourselves up, getting our bylaws, getting our rules, getting our activities together, setting up the consortium itself in the first part of this year. Now we're off and running. Now the hard work begins. We're going to have to be developing mechanisms, policies, processes, delivering them, not only in the state of Virginia for what's best for Virginia, but also what's best for the country as a whole. And that means we're going to be going out and addressing all these things, and hopefully you guys will line up behind us. I'm convinced that if we spend enough time, even the staunchest of opposers will see the light. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about in number 7 and number 8, and I'll make sure I get you all that information. So comments or questions, and who wants to volunteer before I volunteer them? So again, this is why I asked, with your presentation, sir, this morning first, and with yours, and then what you did, Andrew, I think it really set us up to have the infrastructure and the understanding necessary for us to go forward and to really acknowledge and our responsibility as the authority to the public and to the government that entrusted us with saying. So if there are no comments and questions, I'm going to move on to Roman numeral 9, which is old business, where we're going to talk about our unique asset inventory update, what research feedback we're getting, and how do we move forward.
Just a couple of quick housekeeping items here primarily. That in your folder in the left-hand side, I believe, there's this large document. This is the update that David's team has done from what we did last year on the asset inventory, including private industry in Virginia, federal facilities, utilities, educational institutions. This is a document that is on our website, that was a part of the annual report. David's team did a pass-through updating it. Really, I wanted to provide this to everybody to see if there's any other type of information you guys want to have included in this, anything that you would like changed or otherwise updated, amended. That there is, I could not figure out how to print it out, but there's a map that populates all of these on like a Google map, so you can. So it's very impressive. It shows all the different assets all across Virginia. That's on the website. That I was not capable of figuring out how to print it out when we were doing this yesterday. So it's a visual kind of all this stuff that's very impressive and beneficial tool to help market us. So really, I just wanted to provide that to folks. And if there's thoughts on any changes or additional information that your group would like to help provide or would like us to look into, please get that back to Chris. Moving forward. Second thing from the college's side, the document behind this is what we produced last year. And I talked to Gary about this a little bit. And I talked to Chev, and they didn't have a lot of additional information to add, but these are some of the programs that are offered, and it has a couple paragraphs on what each university has. John Capps has provided some additional information on what's going on with community colleges will be added to this. But kind of what Gary and I were kicking around, is this the type of information that we want to be showing that Virginia is offering? Is there a different level of stuff that we want to provide? Is it too much or too little? You know, I would appreciate any kind of feedback that you could provide to us, especially from like the higher ed community folks. If we could have different, more, or other types of information. So that was really kind of the housekeeping that I wanted to clean up on the asset inventory stuff. Then on the ongoing research, in the last meeting, there had been a thought of, in our reports and on our website, to kind of catalog what type of ongoing research that we have going on in Virginia. Bob Bailey had mentioned BMW integrated system test, the IST loop, and CAER's integrated control room and operator performance lab in control, which I think is kind of good a way of saying that. That if there's other things out there that you guys would like to have included in the public documents that we have, you know, let Chris know. So I just wanted to say that was the update of what had been provided. I'm sure there's other things. But those are the housekeeping items that I had there.
And any comments to Chris?
Yeah, any comments to Chris, because I'll be gone after this. I'm having 4 of them with Chris, but not to get lost to me there. So, you know, Chris will work with you guys to figure out the best way to present these in the annual report and on the website.
I can email out everybody all my contact info, so it's taken care of.
Yeah.
And this is really important, is we're going to move forward if we can list all the things we're doing. For example, what you talked about this morning, Dr. Coleman, your activity, I wasn't aware that was happening. That should be listed as an activity, as an asset of what's going on as far as research in this state. The kinds of things that we're doing at Jefferson Labs, the other information you're doing, what you're doing at universities. If you are not opposed to listing what you're doing, I don't know why you would be, but you might be for some reason. We need to have a list of that to facilitate a recognition just exactly how robust the activities are in the Commonwealth. Without that, we're talking about what we believe it is, but we don't really have something we can point to say, this is why we believe this. This is the basis for our statements, that Virginia, the Commonwealth, is the leading state in the country for nuclear science technology, education, research, and activity. So if you'll all input to that, we'll make sure we get that information. If you don't have any input, would you kindly say, we don't have any input, so we don't have to chase you down? So if you can give me a negative response, I would appreciate it. This way, otherwise we're going to be thinking that maybe you just didn't get a chance to answer. So no input, say no input, so that we can wrap up the entire 20-member activity at the Virginia Nuclear Consortium Authority. Yes, sir.
So can you send us what you have so we can actually properly add to it?
Sure.
I get your dot on.
And one comment I want to make: we are not the leader in nuclear science and engineering.
We will be.
We have to be, but we are not. And that requires state of Virginia.
What makes you say we're not the leader?
We are not.
Okay, I hear that. I've heard a lot of statements. What's your basis for that statement?
We don't have the resources. We don't have the people.
Okay, and what is the basis for that statement?
Come to Virginia Tech, see what's the size of nuclear engineering program.
Okay, forgive me,
Come to VCU, what's the size of nuclear engineering program. Come to UVA, what's the size? 0. So
talk about your program, Slick.
Well, you need to be careful when you say that, because I've been in this education system, as you know, in the United States, coming from Penn State, University of Florida. You see the investment going on in those states. There's no investment. So we have to be careful not to sell ourselves. We need to be there, so we need resources.
Can I make a comment?
Before